Pressing namesets is easy when you know how, but if you're not happy with the results you've been getting, it's probably because you've been making some of these mistakes. So stay to the end and see our top 5 and also our number 1 tip. Buying a nameset is where it all started for me many years ago when I started out restoring football shirts. And all of the one-to-ones that I do with customers, they all agree that starting out by buying a heat press and buying in the namesets is probably the best place to start. But to be able to get good results with your heat pressing, it takes time and practice and avoiding these 5 mistakes. So let's jump in. Number 1 is using the wrong temperature, pressure, time and peel on your nameset. So the temperature is the heat at which the heat press is pressing. The time is the amount of time that you have it pressed down for. Pressure is, as the name suggests, the pressure at which the heat press is pressing down. And the peel is when you're peeling the application tape off, whether it's cool, warm or hot peel. The settings you should use for the things that you're pressing on very much depend on the materials being used. Here at WeFix Kits, we make all of our namesets and our sponsors bespoke. And if you want a set or if you want some, then drop us a comment down below and we can help you out. But for our vinyl, we use 130 degrees Celsius for the press. We use a medium pressure, 15 seconds as the time, and a warm peel. For the flock, it's pretty much the same, but it needs a hotter temperature. So we recommend about 150 degrees rather than 130, 15 seconds, medium pressure, warm peel. But our tip here is make sure you check with whoever you've bought your namesets or sponsors from to make sure you're using their recommended setting. Getting the right pressure on the heat press is really important for making sure you get some good results. Pretty much every heat press is going to have a little knob like this that allows you to make the pressure higher or lower, move the plate up and down. And there's a nice little trick that I use to make sure I get the plate pressure set correctly. And what we'll need for that is maybe some normal paper, or in this case I've got some tissue paper. And what you do is you adjust the plate and then you pull it all the way down. Now what you're looking for is making sure that when you pull on this paper, there's a fair amount of resistance to it coming out, but it does come out a little bit. If you pull it too easily and it comes out too easily, it shows there's not enough pressure there. If you pull it and there's no give at all, it doesn't come out at all, what will happen is your shirt will get left with an impression mark from the plate all the way around because the pressure's too high. The second mistake we see people making is not using the right protective kind of sheets to cover the material when you're doing the press. All football shirt material is prone to being scorched by the plate on the heat press. So what we recommend you do is you use either Teflon or silicone sheet. Some material, especially stuff that's been sublimated like this, so by sublimated that's an ink that's kind of been run onto the material to make this pattern. When you're pressing material like that, that ink can actually run onto the plate of the heat press, which is why it's really important that you make use of sheets to cover it. So like I say, use Teflon sheet if you can. This is an example of Teflon sheet. There's a couple of different types of it. Some of it has a little bit of a texture, some of it is completely flat and smooth. So bear that in mind, because what you don't want to do is use a textured one like this is and have that pattern pressed onto an existing artifact on a shirt, maybe an Umbro or something like that, because that will go into the vinyl and damage it. So be aware of that. But this is really important for protecting the material on the shirt, stopping it from getting scorched. A lot of heat presses have something that feels like this on the plate built in, but bear in mind you really need to make use of a separate sheet to protect that material. The second sheet that you can use is silicone paper, which is similar to greaseproof paper, and whilst Teflon you can kind of reuse that over and over, it's a little bit more expensive. Silicone paper is a lot cheaper and you can chuck it away after a use if you need to. Where I really recommend using silicone paper rather than Teflon sheet is if you're pressing onto, like I say, sublimated material, because what can happen is the ink, the sublimated ink, can be migrated over onto this paper. And that's fine if you do it once, because then what you should do is you chuck away that bit of sheet. But if you reuse this, once it's had ink already kind of migrated onto it, that ink can be transferred onto the next shirt that you press. And once that ink gets on there, there is no way you're getting it off. It's effectively embedded in. So if you use Teflon sheet on sublimated material, that's fine. But the likelihood is that some ink will transpose onto this and you'll have to chuck it, which can be quite an expensive thing to do. Now, there are first two most common mistakes, but stick with us because these next two you're really going to want to watch. The third mistake people make is they don't secure items when they're pressing it. When you open and shut the heat press plate, or your position in a shirt, it can easily move the things that you've laid out ready to press. So in order to avoid that happening, what you need to do is use some heat sensitive tape. That will just go at the corners of the items that you're pressing on, and it will stop things from moving around. It's relatively cheap, and I promise you, once you start doing that, you won't ever stop doing it. Now, the bonus tip around taping things down is make sure you use only clear tape to secure things down. What you don't ever want to use is tape with colouring like this yellow tape, because what will happen, especially at very high temperatures, is that yellow will get transferred onto the shirt that you're pressing onto. And if it's that white shirt, then it becomes a horrible mark and a nasty mistake to make. So remember, clear tape, not yellow tape. Part of the secret to a good heat pressing result is making sure things are perfectly centrally placed and well spaced on a shirt. And the fourth mistake that we see people making is that they don't use pens to measure the middle of the shirt and of the name sets, and even in terms of the placement on the shirt before they press it. And the way to do that is using permanent markers on the things you're pressing and heat activated ink pens to mark on the shirt. So when you're pressing a name set on, make sure you use fine pen like that and mark it on the middle of the name set like this. When it comes to the numbers, especially when there's double numbers like this, again, find the middle and draw a line down and then tape the numbers to one another using some application tape. And to find the center of the shirt, what you need is something like this, which is a collar ruler, and you line it up and there's a center on there and you use that to find the middle. Then what you do is you use one of these pens with special ink. So this ink will disappear when it gets hot, which is fine because when you heat press, it's going to come out. So you find the center, you mark 2 points, and then you use a good ruler to draw a line. Like I say, don't worry, because you can draw on a shirt as much as you like with this. Once you heat press it, the ink will come out. Just make sure you don't do what I've done in the past, which is get this confused with the permanent marker. Now, one little bonus tip here to remember is with these pens, don't give too much force into the material, because what it can do is still leave a bit of a mark. Just make sure you have enough pressure for the ink to run onto the shirt, but not so much pressure that you've almost kind of made a mark in the material. So there's a load of things that I've gone through, a load of items, and we've got links to all of the items in the description below so that you can buy the things that we recommend. Now, before I go on to the number one mistake people make, if you'd like, there's a video up there that will take you through how to do the perfect heat press. So I'll go into a little bit more detail around how to do a heat press rather than just focusing on the mistakes that people make. And on to our final, but in our opinion, the most common and biggest mistake that people make when they're doing heat presses. And that is they don't use pads. Now, pads are used to protect the shirt, provide protection to the material or to the other side of a shirt, and they're really important things to use. And there are two types of pad that we use. This is a pressing pad, and what happens with this is it gets passed inside the shirt. You press it inside the shirt, and what that will do is it will stop things on the front from being pressed onto the back. And an example of that, say to use this Everton shirt, is this badge here. This is a sewn on badge, so it's got a little bit of depth to it. If you were to press something onto the front of this shirt without using a pad. On the back here would be the outline of that badge, and you'd find it really difficult to get it off. So make sure you use a pressing pad. And the second type of pad that we use are these, and they're called Teflon pads. And what we use these for is to protect elements of the shirt while we're pressing. So for example, if we were pressing a new sponsor on here and we didn't want to do anything to damage that there, we could use something like this over the top of that to protect it from the heat while still being able to press that. And things like this, the longer ones, they work well to slide up the sleeves of shirts for pressing sleeve patches on. So buy a pair of these, they're invaluable. So these are our 5 most common mistakes that we see people make when they're doing heat pressing. If you've got any other mistakes that you've seen and you need some help with, drop us a comment below in the comments and we'll try and help you. So if you follow this video and don't make the same mistakes we've made, you're going to see your results skyrocket. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, please remember to click like and subscribe. It really helps us as a small channel growing on YouTube. And if you like this video, you're going to love this one and this one. So check them out and we'll see you next week.